need to come to you or over there. Oh, yeah. Okay, well, we go ahead and start the meeting and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for coming. It's Wednesday, March 1st, 10 a.m. This is a general meeting for the Curry County Board of Commissioners. We'll start with agenda item 2 for agenda amendments. And again, I'll emphasize again, if anybody just started the meeting, if anyone wants to speak, please fill out a speaker slip, because once we do get into this agenda, we will not accept speaker slips. So anybody else wants to speak, please fill out a slip.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Boyce.
Thank you. I'm going to speak immediately after the CTR presentation on the need for policy and procedure changes. And I'm probably going to need about 10 minutes. So just say yes.
Well, there's a item 5. You're talking about Curry Transfer has a presentation as item 5A, and that was a continuation from a prior meeting.
Correct.
Then Catherine Wiley has a presentation that was put in by myself on her behalf with an agenda routing slip that's 5B.
And I'll go immediately before her, and I think I can give her some confidence on some of the issues that she has if she is still planning to speak.
I will not accept that. I don't know Commissioner Gold as an amendment.
Well,
why would you not?
We have to go through the...
That Commissioner comments would be agenda item 12.
Yeah,
I think I take that as a commissioner comment.
Yeah, just put it in the commissioner comment.
No?
Nope.
No.
So...
Commissioner Gold, you might want to recuse yourself here. You're a very good friend, and I think that would be the ethical thing to do. And I would like very much to, I've been very respectful in all of our meetings, and I've been silenced a couple of times, and so I think it's time to, as commissioner, elected by the people, I have every responsibility and obligation to speak to these issues.
We have a procedure, Commissioner Boyce, for adding items to the agenda. We also have an agenda item 12, which is commissioner comments.
And you have agenda amendments that are completely acceptable.
So you want to propose an agenda amendment?
Yes, of course.
On it, and
that's what commissioners do.
To
go immediately after CTR, Curry Transfer.
And I'm saying I would not accept that.
Well, get your notepad.
Pardon me?
Get your notepad, because that's when I'm going to speak.
I beg to differ.
I know you're the chair, sir, and
okay,
yes.
You still have the floor.
Okay, thank you.
And then when you're through, I will recognize myself to speak. Okay. Continue.
You have the authority of chair, but we carry equal authority on this board. And you might interpret that as power and control. I interpret that as respect and service. So I have equal opportunity to revise and extend my remarks and reclaim my time, and I'll reserve that right. And so I want to speak as requested, and I have every right to do that.
Okay, are you?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. As a commissioner, we have commissioner comments. We have additions to an agenda item. That's why we have agenda amendments. You're proposing to not only add an amendment, but to tell this board where that amendment is going to be placed. And if you have...
And I have the authority to do that as you do.
Commissioner Boyce, point of order. I have the floor.
Okay.
And did you want to say something, County Counsel?
Well, I think amendments are done by a motion and a vote. So
correct.
One commissioner doesn't have authority to overrule any other commissioner. It's a vote process.
Correct. So are you making a motion to that effect, Commissioner Boyce? You have the floor.
If that's proper protocol, I make a motion to be able to amend the agenda and speak as requested.
In that particular spot.
That's correct.
Okay. Do we have a second? With no second, that motion dies for lack of a second. Okay. Do we have any other agenda amendments? County Council?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Since the time of the preparation of the agenda, there are 3 proposed amendments from staff. One of the proposed amendments is item 6C. On item 6C on the consent calendar, it was Planning Commission appointments of J. Brazil, D. St. Marie, W. Fitzgerald, and that has been requested by the Community Development Director to withdraw that for additional advertisement. So that's one proposed amendment to withdraw item 6C from the agenda. So if anyone is here wanting to know about the Planning Commission appointments, the proposal right now is to withdraw that from the agenda. That's a request from
Okay.
staff on that one item.
Do we have any objections to that, Commissioner
No.
Gold?
I'll move, Mr. Chair. I think you need a motion on that, correct? I move so.
I'll second.
Call for the question?
Aye.
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 Thank you. So that item will be brought back at another time after additional advertisements.
I did have, if I may,
Yes.
and certainly not to object to removal, that was one where there was also much confusion when I reviewed the packet because there was duplications again. Every item was duplicated. Every application was duplicated. So there were 2 of each. One of each application has the personal address information for each applicant on there.
That we usually redact.
Correct.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Chair.
And also, that is a form that was used there by the Planning Department or Community Development Department. It is a fillable form, which makes things a lot easier for anyone applying for a committee.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the next item to be withdrawn is 7A, and that is the order to grant Lane County access to Tyler TSG data for GIS purposes. And since submitting that order, yes, Mr. Chair. So this is also being sought to be withdrawn and removed from the action council consideration, board consideration today. Since submitting that motion, I conferred with Lane County, and they are just not interested in getting full access and limited access to the Tyler TSG data, and they've been working with the assessor, they think, in a appropriate fashion. So I'd like to get a motion to withdraw that item, Mr. Chair.
I so move.
Second?
I'll second with discussion.
Okay, call for discussion?
What was the point in all that? I don't understand why that was such a race to get that almost in the form of a demand to our local assessor here to get that to the Lane County people. Is there just a simple misunderstanding, Council Huddle?
Oh, I can speak to
I
that.
can comment. You comment, and then I'll comment, County
Okay.
Council.
Well, in the reasons were put out in the order in that we have had the contract for the GIS work to be done since, I think, November, December.
Correct.
And there has just been some hitches in getting the proper information to the Lane County providers. And so we also have contracts with this Tyler TSG group, and so I contacted them and asked them what was going on, and they said, we tried it this way, the assessor didn't want to release the data fully. And so my thinking after talking to him was, oh, well, they suggested releasing the data fully, so if we release the data fully, then Lane County would have it. So I put that together so we could get the GIS going. Since that time, I talked to Lane County. They said, really, it's the full data isn't the reason, and we're getting the data that we need from the assessor, and they're just trying to actually automate that process. So that was learned since the time of submitting. So really, the urgency was to get our GIS system functioning, which has been not functioning, the way it should be for a while, a long time actually. So
I've not talked to Assessor Cullen about this, but was he contacted prior to this to, it was scheduled to be on the agenda item?
You haven't talked to Assessor Cullen about this?
Not recently.
Okay, good. So you have, just not recently.
That's correct.
Thank you, okay.
So was he notified early that that this was a process that we wanted to do here, and that it would be on the agenda?
I think he received a copy of the agenda.
Do you remember the day?
No, I don't.
Not to put you on the spot here, but
That's okay.
I just really wondering if he was involved in this discussion and is simply notified that, hey, is this a approach we might take? And this all could have been avoided, I think, just by knocking on his door. I will ask him that.
It might have been avoided, but I'm not sure it would have been.
Well, no, we don't know for sure, but it would have been worth an attempt, and it's how we could have approached him as an elected official. And maybe I can propose that we all sit down and have a discussion like this and try and get beyond what I think is what looked to be kind of demanding that he do such specific things that I think he wasn't prepared for and was trying to do, and you just clarified that.
Right. I'm not
Thank
interested
you.
in such a meeting. I think it's been resolved, but
Okay.
so.
So this is not going to be on a future agenda, not likely anyway.
It all depends on how the GIS system processes and procedures go forth.
Okay. Well, so next time, if we do have this happen again, I'd like to be in on a meeting and approach him and his staff and see if we can work it out beforehand. Thank you.
Okay, you yield the floor at this point?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good term. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to make a few comments because you're clearly not familiar with the history of this issue. And I have the floor,
Yeah.
Commissioner Boyce. Okay. The contract was let on November 30th of 2016. The contract proposed a completion date. It proposed a time and a date where the initial web application would be spun up, as they would refer to it. That was to be in approximately 2 weeks, which put it at about mid-December of 2016. The estimated completion time of going through all the data, et cetera, for the web application in the original contract, which is public record. Okay, you have access to that. Everyone has access to it. Was approximately January 18th, from my memory, of 2017. Okay. The web application was initially put up in less than 2 weeks. I believe it was beat it by a couple of days. So that web application, per their agreement, they exceeded their expectations and put it up in less time than it was originally proposed. From that point, there was not good data coming out of the Tyler software group via the assessor's office. We can go into a myriad of reasons. The bottom line was that they did not have the data to complete the web application testing and put accurate data out. They knew from what data they were getting that it was not accurate data. The first time that finally, after various attempts to get an export of data from the assessor through Tyler Software Group software, was February 14th or 15th of this month. So a full month after their original contract estimated completion, that was the first time they finally received an export of data. There was much correspondence back and forth, and certainly with the assessor also, many people were involved in that. The next 2 weeks, up till yesterday or the day before, have been back and forth for Lane County GIS personnel, specifically their project manager, to receive credentials or access to the county servers, where some scripts from Tyler Software Group are done to take data and put it in a format that's applicable or workable for the GIS enterprise system that they've designed for us. Again, the first time that was received was on or about February 14th or 15th, a month after Lane County had committed to complete the project. But clearly they could not without data. They still, as of yesterday, do not have the credentials to access the county server. This is the Curry County server that houses some of this, these spreadsheets or Excel spreadsheets ultimately. They're still working now in conversations with the assessor's office and Tyler Software, a representative that they're able now to speak with to get this. So this is still not done. That is why I think, I'm not going to speak for county council, but that is why this request, they had to get some access so they could get the project done, because now it's 6 weeks past due, none of their doing. So to say that, you know, this was a short notice and why is this happening, that's why it's happening. They're on top of things like, I wish every contractor, every vendor that we have would be on top of things. Okay, so that's okay.
So, Mr. Chair?
That's why this has occurred. Okay.
So Lane County gives, excuse me.
Yes, you have the floor.
Thank you. So Lane County gives Assessor Cole and his staff good marks, or they're happy right now as
They're
it
happy
stands?
right now,
Okay.
correct, that's correct.
Thank you.
But to clarify, this is not, because this is not a spur of the moment thing that prompted county council to put this in. Far, far from it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So-
County Council?
So we're back to now we've had discussion on this to remove this from the meeting agenda.
Okay, I have one more comment to Council Huddle. In the interest of total forthrightness, I did talk to Assessor Colin late yesterday on several things. I asked him if he did know or was aware that it had been taken off the agenda. He said yes. I asked him if he's going to attend today. He did not say for sure he was going to attend. Details, no. There was no time for that. Thank you.
Okay.
I can provide details for that.
Well,
and I would say that
excuse me.
much of what you
Okay.
said there,
Okay.
Commissioner Huxley, was incorrect.
Okay.
So I would just like to clarify for the record
When-
what the history of this was.
You have 3 minutes, Assessor Colin.
Okay.
You just took
Okay.
10 minutes.
You have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Since this is not even on for your discussion right now as comments, so please. You have
You
the floor.
postponed it last minute.
You don't have the floor, Commissioner Boyce.
Thank you.
Assessor Colin has been
And what I
recognized.
would say is, we got a request from Lane County for the data that they needed to develop the GIS project for Curry County in November. And we got them all the data that they requested within days. The only other time that they've had a request for data came on February 14th. And we responded to that request within just a matter of a couple hours, I believe. So Lane County would tell you that they've had no problem gaining access when they've requested it. I think the issue here is what we have done in the assessor's office is we've run a job that downloads the data that Lane County has requested to a site daily. And we actually did set up that job on January 9th. So that's been there. The problem is establishing a link for Lane County to that data. And I'm not an IT guy, so I don't really understand what the issue is with that. What I would tell you is I did talk to the people at Tyler the other day, and I asked them, I mean, I don't understand why this is taking so long, because Curry County has actually done this twice in the past, and there didn't ever seem to be a problem with it. And what Tyler told me was that they didn't establish that link for us in the past. So this is something new for them that they've never done before, and they don't have full access inside our county's network, which makes it further difficult for them. For them, it's kind of like trying to unlock a safe from the inside. And so, I mean, they don't really have everything they need to make this happen for Curry County as well. There's a couple other clarifications that I would make that on things that you had in your order. In your fourth whereas in your order, it says Tyler Group and TSG to assist and service the county's tax and assessment functions, and under that agreement develops data that is critical. So the clarification on that is that Tyler doesn't send those data sets to us. We generate those data sets here locally in the assessor's office at Curry County, and then we send those on to Lane County. So it might be a small point, but you've got that wrong. Lane County asked them to comment on that, and they said, I agree with that statement, and the statements are accurate from their perspective. So that's one thing. In your fifth whereas of your order, it says it is possible to grant Lane County access to the data, yet the assessor did not want to grant Lane County access due to concerns over possible data corruption. Our comment on that is we do absolutely want to grant Lane County full access to all the data that they're interested in. What we don't want to do is grant Lane County access within the assessment and taxation programs, because that's what could lead possibly to corruption. So the difference is right now we are exporting the data that they have requested and putting it outside our system, where they will be able to get to it once we establish that link, rather than granting them access within our assessment and taxation programs. Lane County, once again, says I agree with those statements, and the statements are accurate from their perspective. Lane County went on to say, Lane County GIS Department does not want to have full access to Lane County, well, this was actually in response to a comment from Council Huddle, which he said he assumed that Lane County has full access to their own assessors' data and the data of the other counties that they serve. And so Lane County responds that the Lane County GIS Department does not have full access to Lane County data, such as our assessment and taxation data. We have a read-only database view that is set up for us by IT staff. This is also the same scenario for the other counties we support. I would actually feel uncomfortable with full access to the TSG system, as I'm really not familiar with it. So I think, Chair, you're characterizing this as the assessor's office not being cooperative with Lane County.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We have cooperated with Lane County every step of the way and are working to the best of our ability to assist Tyler with establishing the link. I don't understand why it's taken so long. This, like I said, this has happened twice before in Curry County, and it didn't take anywhere near this time. But when this has happened before, Tyler wasn't the one that had to try and provide that access.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, question, the last call you made, who is that from again?
That was from Lane County.
Thank you. One more question. They assist other counties? I wasn't aware of that.
They do.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I just want to emphasize this whole thing, this whole last 20 minutes could have been avoided, plus the agenda, the postponement or pulling it off the agenda could have been avoided by picking up the telephone, saying, hey, we need work on this. How can we proceed? That's my view. Thank you.
Well, they didn't have to call me to avoid this. They could have called Layton County to avoid this, and they would have gotten this same information that I've had to go out and collect for you, so.
Thank you.
Okay, so for the record, I did reach out to Lane County, which is why I offered to pull the agenda item and avoid this last 20 minutes.
We continue to have people come in with these speaker slips. As I've mentioned, at the beginning of the meeting, we're sticking to the protocol that's been in place, and speaker slips, these last several that have come in, will not be called on when we come to the public comments. So we're now, County Council, okay, so we're back.
I think there's a motion and a second.
A motion and a second
discussion.
to remove this item 7A from the agenda.
Right.
Call for the question?
Aye.
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 Thank you. And then there was one other item, Mr. Chair, agenda amendment. And I think the board can handle this. It's actually going to be a proposed amendment to a document submitted in order, and it's item 7E. So this is really, I don't think you need to make a motion on this, but when the time comes to consider the item, it says request under 7E. I think the notes that I have say that it would be request to withdraw the item, but my understanding is there's going to be a request to substitute the job description from the proposed job description in the agenda. So I don't think technically that's an agenda amendment, but I just want to give the board heads up when we get to that item.
So we're not proposing to remove it?
I think we are proposing to change. This is an order to approve a job description. And when it was realized that the job description was also submitted in haste and included some incorrect information, the thought was, well, let's pull it. But because of the time constraints of trying to fill a position, staff worked to revise the job description. So I believe, and I think the Parks
Now that
Director's
was
here.
late yesterday afternoon, I understand, because I was in the management meeting when it was discussed.
Oh, correct, Mr. Chair. So I think we can, it's up to, I think the idea now is to submit a revised job description to the board to consider. So, and I don't know that that's an amendment necessarily. I think it's something that can come up in discussion on 7E that is already on the agenda.
So you're not proposing to remove it from the agenda? Or do we have a motion to, to remove it from the agenda?
I think we need consensus.
Well, I think I am not proposing to remove it from the agenda. I'm just giving the board.
That's on the sheets, but we're changing that based on what you said.
Okay, so the
Correct?
agenda, let me take a look here.
Just-
So when I look at the agenda that was published, Mr. Chair, I'm trying to see which agenda we're trying to amend, but the agenda that was published under 7E says administrative assistant position in juvenile. And then I think what happened was, since the time that was submitted, again in haste with some erroneous information, similar to the item on the assessor and the TSG information that we just spent a long time discussing. We have an administrative assistant position juvenile, which is on the agenda that was published. What I believe you're looking at is a commissioner notes agenda that
Correct.
says
Well,
to
which
pull
is
it.
what the other two were that we discussed.
Right.
Correct. Those same notes
And
were
so,
on there.
right, so this is really information that my understanding, and the juvenile director is here, that we were, instead of pulling it as your commissioner notes agenda says, it would be left on with a change of job description for the board to consider.
Okay.
And I think that will be submitted to the board if it hasn't already been. Do we have paper copies of that, or did that get distributed? It's in the submittals. Okay, thanks. So that's all I had, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Do we have any other amendments to the agenda?
So I move that we accept the agenda as amended.
So, second.
Call for the question?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, on announcements, there's one here. I have several others. Okay, the deadline for submission of applications to the South County position of the Budget Committee is next Wednesday, March 8th, 2017. I received a call last week. Apparently his email system had crashed, but I received a call from Clyde Burke asking that we remove his name from the applicant list. He explained that his mom has turned 103 and her health is not doing well, so he's having to tend to that. That's all my comments at this point.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Boyce?
does that leave us with 3 applicants at this time then?
I don't know.
I think 2.
There was
Tom Brandt?
Tom Brandt.
Terry
there was-
Hanscom?
Oh, actually 3, you're right.
Okay.
Who's the
so
third
at
one?
least
I'm
3.
drawing a blank.
Pardon me?
I'm drawing a blank on the
Lloyd
third.
Whaley.
Yes, excuse me.
Okay.
Thank you.
So on public comments, now this is different. County Council, you want to explain your rationale for putting some of the presentations in here, just so everybody's clear on this? We have 2 presentations under public comments.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Curry Transfer and Recycling waited the entire last meeting because they were under presentations, which were at the end, and they never got a chance to speak. So to ensure that Curry Transfer and Recycling got a chance to present the board with their presentation on recycling, they were put into the public comment section so they could be near the beginning of the meeting. And we have received suggestions and recommendations from board members that presentations to the board should be placed earlier in the agenda to avoid happening to presentations what happened to Curry Transfer and Recycling. So that's why those were placed there, and the agenda's been approved by the board, so.
Okay. I did fail to make a comment at the beginning of the meeting. We're going to try, because we have another meeting with FEMA that's been scheduled for the county early this afternoon, later today in the city of Brookings. So the attempt here, if we don't finish, we will basically suspend the meeting to make the accommodations for this FEMA meeting, which starts, I believe, at 1:30 this afternoon downstairs. And I believe there's another FEMA meeting with the same group in Brookings later this afternoon. I'm not sure of the time. There was one other speaker slip that was submitted before the meeting started, and that was from Britt Boyce. So we'll take the written public comments before these. So you want to have the floor?
I actually wasn't prepared to answer that right now. I just figured I'd better turn it in case I needed to speak at some point.
Okay, so you had for policies and procedure. Okay, so you want to speak to the policies and procedures one. Okay, okay. Yes. So the first presentation under public comments, agenda item 5A, is a carry forward from a prior meeting with Curry Transfer and Recycling presentation.
I'm not Luke Pike, I'm sorry. He
Did you have a PowerPoint that you wanted
I do
to
have one,
do?
yes.
So we may need a little assistance from Charles or Jesse in the back to help get you set up. Could we?
Charles might be taking a nap, huh?
Doubt it.
I doubt it
Never.
very much that he's
Never.
napping. He may not. Okay. Here he is. Thank you. Charles?
We have a PowerPoint.
You have a laptop?
I have a flash drive. I'm sorry, I thought we had it set up, so.
The PowerPoint is in our packet. It's in our agenda packet on our computers.
This is why you all bought a presentation laptop.
Okay.
Can we, Charles, can we access from one of these? Sorry.
I got it on mine too.
If you would like to plug the VGA
Into
the
this.
USB and convert it, you can give it a
Okay.
try. I'll have to re-sign these screens.
Do you want to do with somebody else first before?
And the USB.
I can speak to it without the presentation if that's.
Let's see.
I think the slides are helpful.
Yeah, they are very helpful.
What are,
One's on one side and one's on the other. Is it picking up the VGA?
There you go.
Okay, so let me go to,
Do you mind if I move this around?
no, that's fine.
let me just go down, I'll scroll down to the, okay, let's go back here.
Okay, over here.
Take a look on that screen.
And you just tell me when to scroll down.
Okay, great. Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to speak for you, before you. I know that some of you are new to our, what we do at CTR. My name's Candy Wilk. I'm the office manager and kind of the recycle coordinator. I put on a lot of different hats, but I've been with Curry Transfer and Recycling for 15 years and been working with the recycling program. So as you know, some of you know that we actually there's two things that come together here. Every year the state of Oregon puts together a recycling recovery report. We submit our data to the DEQ, which goes up to the state of Oregon, and every year we annually submit our solid waste numbers and tonnage, both in what goes to the landfill and what gets recycled and recovered. So that's this report. This report will cover what the 2015 report, what was published in October, this last October for 2015, and compile. I'll give you some information on what we submitted for 2016. So, just a little background on Curry Transfer and Recycling. We've been in business since Curry Transfer and Recycling has been here since 1970, and we are the franchised hauler for the whole county of Curry County. We have franchises with each of the cities, Gold Beach, Brookings, Port Orford, and the county. So we have 4 franchises. So we do all of the recycling and the trash hauling for Curry County. We also have Roto-Rooter, so we do that for Del Norte County and for Curry County. So the next slide. Basically, if you can scroll that up a little bit, the Oregon requires all jurisdictions with a population of, for all cities with a population of at least 4,000 to have a curbside recycling program. And so we in Curry County expand that. We're required to have a curbside recycling program in the city of Brookings and the urban growth areas. We have expanded that. We cover Gold Beach and Port Orford and the urban growth areas. So we, with a population base of 22,000, over 22,000, we are offering curbside recycling, or the opportunity to recycle at curbside for almost 16,000 people. So, so we feel like we're kind of above and beyond and still spreading out. We're going to be changing some of our programs, which I'll talk about in a little bit, that may even expand that a little bit more. But we also have recycle depots at all our transfer sites. We have 4 transfer sites, one in Brookings, Ridge Creek, which is just north of Thomas Creek Bridge, Nasika Beach, and Port Orford. So we have recycling depots. So there's actually opportunity for recycling in all of Curry County for all the residents and businesses. So the next page. Next slide. You can kind of keep your pulse on the economy by looking at waste in Curry County and all over. You can see in 2005 we peaked out at 22,189 tons of dry creek. That's just to the landfill tonnage of waste. In 2010, that dropped to just under 17,000. 2014, it was our lowest point at 15,700, and then you can see back up. This is an older screen. I had actually an updated screen, but in 2015 it was 17,000, and then in 2016 over here it's gone up to 19,000. So you can see it just follows the economy. When people, Jane did a really nice article for us, and she said that, you know, when the economy is good, people waste more. You know, they buy more and they waste more. And you can even see this second line here, CTR tons. There's two components really to the recycling part of it. Actually, recycling is waste, and they consider that waste is just recovered from the landfill, so that can be reused. So they're looking at all the waste, not just landfill waste, but all the waste that we generate here. There's two components to the waste that they count, or the recovered waste, and that's what we do at our site, because we're the franchise haulers, or we're the haulers for and the collectors for recycling. But also there's some other county tons that are reported, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So you can see that between CTR recycled tons and other county tons, this total recycled material right there, you can see that at the most tonnage that we wasted, we have the least amount of recycling. And as our tonnage went down, our recycling numbers went up a little bit. And you can see that following there, that people actually, there was an incentive to recycle, because you know, recycling will reduce your cost on your garbage rates. So there was an incentive there. We're going to try to change that trend to keep people recycling. We have some momentum. We've had some education, so we'll kind of keep that momentum going. So total tons reported, and this is total waste that they consider. In 2015, it was 22,000. Actually, in 2016, we won't have that list that rate published until October. But what Oregon wants to see is our recovery rate. So you can see our recovery rate in 2005 was 15% for the whole county, and in 2015 it was 24.1. We had a higher rate in 2014, but there was some mitigating factors there that I'll talk about in a second as well. Our county goal right now is 30%. Next slide. So how is the recycling collected? At CTR, we have 7 residential and business office paper and commingle routes. We have commercial routes, cardboard and commingle dumpsters. We also have some roll-off collection compactors, like we had it at Fred Meyer's. We also do at our depots tires, metal, e-waste, that's electronic waste, motor oil, and batteries. The other collection, what comes out of on that other line item, basically Ray's and Bi-Mart doesn't come through our site. They backhaul their own cardboard. Bottle and aluminum cans at the grocery stores, that doesn't come through our site. That all goes through the bottle bill, and that gets counted into our numbers. And then local businesses like Oil Can Henry and the O'Reilly's, they collect motor oil. The restaurants have their grease rendering. Others have, some of the businesses, auto dealers deal with tires. There are metal scrappers, and there's other, like Les Schwab, they'll do vehicle batteries. So that all gets counted into the numbers for the total numbers. Next slide. So what may not be captured, we think that probably that we're doing about 30%, but there's a lot of material that's not captured in Curry County. And because it's, CTR is we're the only entity that's required to report. We have an obligation to report. The rest of the entities, it's voluntary. So we have some metal scrappers that sometimes they report and sometimes they don't. So when we had that 27%, we had a metal scrapper that reported, but the next year he didn't report, or that entity did not report. And then there was a metal processor who didn't report either. So that can make our numbers go up and down.
Are they required to report?
They're not required to report.
Oh, okay.
It's one of the things that we're going to be working on to see. We don't know who those other entities are. DEQ will not release those other entities. So on who reports and who doesn't. So we just kind of have to do a little more grassroots and kind of try to figure that out to help boost those numbers up. So if it's going out, if it's being recycled, we want to get it counted. So we just have to figure out a way of getting it counted. Recycling taking out of the county. This may change because Del Norte County, they had a recycling center, Jalindra. I don't know if some of you have taken recycling down there. They recycled everything. Just to let you know that just because you collect everything doesn't mean everything gets recycled. A lot of it gets sent over to China for them to sort out. So there's a lot of things that are collected, like styrofoam, that never really got processed because there has to be markets for it. But once you introduce those things into the stream, it's hard to take it out when there's not markets. So some of that stuff just gets shipped over to other Asian countries for them to sort through and take out. So there was a lot of material being collected, but there were no markets for it. So Jalindra is changing their, a lot of people took their material to Del Norte County because they thought that it was being recycled. But they have had to change their operation. The owner actually passed away and his daughter took over and is seeing that there wasn't really these markets, so she's changing the way they're doing it. So they're not going to be taking as much material. So maybe that material might stay in the county.
The name of that company again, I'm sorry?
Jalindra.
Got it, thank you.
Right. He had 3 daughters, Julie, Linda, and Sandra.
Jolinda.
Jalindra. So they're just going to be taking the redemption material, like the aluminum cans and the water bottles, the bottles. And then grease collected by rendering, the restaurants. I think there's a lot of restaurants that do the grease rendering that we don't get that captured. So those are the numbers that are not being captured. Okay, next slide. So, what are the changes in 2017? Fred Meyer's is going to be hauling their own cardboard. They're now baling it. We were doing that for them, but they're going to be doing it themselves. I don't think that's going to affect our numbers, except it's just one more. It's just one more number that's out of our purview. So we won't be capturing that in our at our yard. So it's just one of those black box kind of things that goes into who's recycling, who else is recycling. Ray's in Brookings, that's a loss of the cardboard numbers. Del Norte County is changing their recycling program. One good thing is, and we just found, this just happened last week, that CTR is going to be proposing roll cart recycling, so no longer those little small bins. We're going to be doing the garbage, the larger carts. We're going to be proposing that. That's going to be, we're going to be presenting that to the county and the cities this year. Probably in the next month or two, we'll be coming to you and talking to you about that. We had to get that process through our parent company, and they've approved us to roll that program out and make a proposal to you for that. Yard waste disposal. One of the things about yard waste, I don't think I have a slide. I think I put another slide in there that's probably not in here. But yard waste disposal is a big thing in Oregon that we don't get to capture because we actually burn it here. We don't have a place to process it. We would have to either take that to Eugene or Medford. So the cost has just been prohibitive. So we burned it, but we probably are going to be changing that. That's probably something we're going to be looking at possibly hauling that. So those numbers will actually roll up into our recycled numbers. The only things that get really counted are the things that are recovered. So burning is not considered recovering that material.
You never get a chance to burn it when it's not green, I assume.
Yeah, you have to let it.
That,
Yeah, right.
yeah.
So it's a problem, and it's, you know, it's a safety issue as well. So we'll be looking to probably start hauling that, and then we'll be capturing those numbers. And then just more education. It takes about 200 tons of material to raise our percentage up 1%. That's a lot of material to get up. So education alone is good, but it's not going to get our numbers up to 30%. We're going to have to figure out what other material to capture. Okay, next screen. So the rural challenges. So this chart, if you can go just a little bit more, this is a chart out of the state of Oregon and what was captured in the state of Oregon. So all of these materials here are captured. The material that's south of on the lower part is materials that we don't capture for recovery, basically, except metal. So, but most of the metal was going to the scrap yards, and we were getting very little of that metal. Now that the scrap metal market has dropped, bottomed out, we are getting a little bit more of that metal. But up until 2015, we were not capturing that bottom part, and you can see that's a fairly significant piece of the whole recovery in Oregon. So that's what we're going to be looking at. And the reason we're not capturing that is that we're so far from market. We don't have places. Typically, haulers are not the processors of this material. They just haul it to a processor. So we'll be looking at maybe better ways of capturing that. So that will increase. That's where our numbers are going to increase right there. So next slide. This is just the report also from the 2015 Oregon State Recovery Report. And I sorted this by pounds per capita. So you can see from, it starts with the lowest amount of tonnage that's recovered at the top to the bottom, which ends up being Metro and Portland and Eugene, who actually recover the most. We are kind of in the middle here, but if you can see the yellow highlights are the rural counties that have similar challenges to us. We probably, except for Wallowa County, we're probably the most challenged as far as transportation and distance. We have to take our material up to Portland and Washington. So transportation-wise, we're not on a main trucking lane, where most of the other counties have trucking lanes and that can get to material to market real easy. So as far as rural counties, we're real close to Baker. Baker's the best that recovers the most, but we're not far behind that. So we feel that as far as rural, we're pretty much in line with what's going on in the county. In all of the counties. Ready for the next slide. So, just real quickly, again, we basically take our material to Longview, Washington, Portland, Clackamas, Toledo, and Medford. Medford is where we take our e-waste. The rest of the material goes up to Longview. We take up to Portland area, and we take about 8 loads a month. And keep going through these fairly fast.
You want to go to
Yeah.
the next one? Okay.
Right. The next slides are just showing you the
Okay.
processors. This is a processor up in Portland. That's where all of our commingled material, which is the mixture of paper, bottles, magazines, cardboard, everything that you put into your recycling bins, that goes up to Portland to the material recovery facility and gets processed, a lot of it by hand. I mean, it's all conveyor belts, but it's all sorted. Still pretty labor intensive. You can just run through these. Just kind of shows you the processing plant there. And that was a newspaper plant in Newburgh, Oregon, turning your paper right into newsprint. And so some of the community outreach that we're doing now, we give tours and presentations. We have a website. We put messages on our bills. Jane did a really nice article, and we're going to do more advertising. We do radio advertising, home show. I don't think we're having a home show this year, but any events, we'll do exhibits. And then the city and the chamber, or the city has a new website link on theirs, and we are hoping that we can work with the county and the other cities to get our site on their link to their sites.
Go to the next one, or?
And the next one, yes. And this is just a tour that we did with the kindergarten crew at Brookings. They're the class of 2028. And we just think, and you ask them about recycling and they know it. And they go home and they make their parents recycle, and they want to know why they're not recycling. So they're really on the ball there.
Reading, writing, and recycle. Reading, writing, and
right.
recycle.
Arithmetic, that's the 4 hours,
Yeah.
or the 7 hours or whatever. So that's the presentation, and that's kind of the efforts that we're doing right now. Do you have any questions?
Thank you very much.
Good job.
Thank you.
Okay.
Now I know who Candy is.
Thank you. I'm gonna go out a little bit.
Okay.
The next presentation is on policies and procedures by Catherine Wiley. Now, your documents that are included are also here. Do you want to reference any of these on the screen, or should we get out?
Unless anybody wants to, I don't need to.
Okay, why don't I get
Thank
out
you.
here? And let me pull that.
My name is Catherine Wiley, and I have had a home here in Curry County for almost 27 years now. And I made the request to do a presentation because of concerns that I have about policies and procedures. And I think this morning's examples are just a perfect example of why they're needed. Part of the things that make things function well is when there is consistency and when the same rules and regulations apply to everyone. And while I can appreciate the request, in fact, support the request that there be increased communication among elected officials and department directors and staff, the road department director was not consulted when a recommendation was made by a commissioner that $6 million be borrowed, made as a loan. So it's really clear to me that it would benefit us all if there were policies and procedures that were inclusive and cooperative and constructive. In that light, and I'll say right off the bat that to the people here, Connie Hunter and Jan Barbas. Connie Hunter on February 1st made a comment about the policies of appointing people to volunteer committees. And Jan Barbas made a comment in Facebook about also how people were, if there were policies and procedures regarding how selections are made, how applications are made, how people are selected, and having an open and encouraging process, it would be far more conducive to serving the citizens of Curry County. For me, it is and excuse me, I've got 2 additional things that I would like to submit as documentation. I'm a bit picky with myself about having documentation. The 2 items are Facebook from Mr. Brock Smith with follow-up from various people who are participating in Facebook. And the other is a draft of policies and procedures regarding travel expenses that was done by Susan Brown last fall and evidently never went anywhere. So I'd like to submit that as an encouragement and a start to get things going. I'm sorry to hand it to you.
It's okay,
It's
I'm right
easier.
here.
Thank
Yeah.
you, I appreciate that.
Are there copies sufficient for each
Those are the
commissioner?
copies that I made.
Yeah, for each commissioner?
I hope so.
Sure.
Okay.
Take one, pass it down, please.
Okay, thank you. As a preamble to the
Same here.
presentation that I
another
submitted,
one?
and the request that I made
There were only
was...
3 of those.
Pardon me?
There were only 3 of those.
I'm sorry, which one do you need
The
another one
Facebook.
of? Here,
Yeah.
I have another one.
Thank you,
Yeah.
okay,
Okay,
here's a 4th
I don't need
then.
it.
Okay.
As long
There's
as
a
the
If that's the fourth, I'll
documentation is
take that
here.
one then.
Okay. So, to me, it is, this is
You have
kind of a
one?
preamble based on some of the social media stuff that's going around that I think is more divisive than it is helpful. It is abundantly clear that clarification is needed, not only regarding recommendations I have made, but the reasons for them. It is also abundantly clear that if the citizens of Curry County are not criticizing, attacking, misrepresenting, and/or disrespecting Commissioner Huxley, they are branded as puppets, his citizen, a ridiculous waste of time, and whatever else. In order to rebuild, during the February 1st, 17th Board of Commissioner meeting, Commissioner Boyce indicated that he would continue to challenge Commissioner Huxley, but also indicated he wanted to help to rebuild and build trust. In order to rebuild, honesty, trust, and respect are essential. The citizens of Curry County deserve no less. David Brock Smith has stated on Facebook on February 25th that Commissioner Boyce is already under attack for very minimal travel. Tom's citizen friend, I guess that's me, wanted to also remind folks of my travel as commissioner. This is a quote, which is documented. My travel as commissioner again, as well, BOC packet, which even though Tom lied in a meeting or two and said it was over budget, it was within budget. Necessary work, and the $3,500 a year in travel brought in millions to our county in return. The remaining inane attack is included in the handout. Clearly, I am identified by the packet Brock Smith referenced and named by current ODF employee and former lead SOD person Stacy Savona. Commentary also includes former county employee Julie Schmelzer and Jan Barbas, a regular on social media. Facts. It wasn't just $3,500 a year. There was also $9,000 a year for the use of an SUV. And it isn't that there shouldn't be travel. There needs to be travel, but there need to be policies and procedures to benefit the citizens of Curry County to do it. Facts. If anyone read my BOC comments, it is absolutely clear that I attacked no one. Brock Smith's expenditure documents were presented as reasons for implementing a travel policy. These expenditures include over 3 pages of meals, casino stays, expensive hotels, car washes, electronics, and window blinds. If Brock Smith did not expend beyond his BOC allocation, why were funds in excess of $3,000 paid from road department funds? If Brock Smith's publicly paid travel brought millions to our county, where's the documentation? A sound policy would ensure the need for travel, the cost effectiveness and cost benefits to the county taxpayers. Why would any responsible elected official not want to be transparent, accountable, and responsible in accord with policies and procedures intended to avoid or eliminate potential abuses, whether or not they occurred in the past? My presentation to the package. Critical need for policies and procedures. On February 12th, I submitted a request that my concerns about a specific agenda item on the 215 BOC meeting be addressed prior to approval. My intent was that all commissioners receive my request in a timely manner, which would allow consideration prior to the meeting. My concerns were read by Commissioner Gold at the meeting per my request, since my submission was not in time to be included in the BOC packet. It is apparent that the issues raised, which impact Curry County citizens, were not addressed. Instead, my documented concerns elicited a stream of emails deflecting my requests, justifying or rationalizing business as usual, personal denouncements, misrepresentations, and questionable inclusions in official communications. All email communications are included as attachments and presented in chronological order. I received Commissioner Boyce's email, which was dated 2/14, copied to his wife Britt, and read by him into the 2/15 Board of Commissioner meeting record. However, it was not sent to me until 2:15 at 9:46 in the morning. Obviously, this did not allow me time to address his offering prior to or during the meeting. I responded to Mr. Boyce Commissioner Boyce, that same morning, instead of addressing my request, which was to implement policies and procedures for reimbursement of travel utilization of county vehicles. I was accused of showing prejudice and making unfortunate assumptions. This is what was said from Commissioner. This is my response to what he said, accusing me of being prejudicial and making unfortunate assumptions, which was read during the meeting. While I appreciate your response below to my 2/12/17 email to the Board of Commissioners, it is apparent that clarifications are indicated. First, as you may recall, you were the candidate who raised the claim that there was an investigation of Mr. Brock Smith's expenses at the candidates forum in the Chetco Library. Second, my specific request was that policies and procedures be established regarding travel expenditures. I did not compare you or anyone else. I used the public expenditures of the previous AOC representative as an example of what I view as unreasonable and excessive travel, county vehicle costs, and unnecessary absences over 208 days, which is essentially a full year of actual work days in the county. Your accusation of prejudice and unfortunate assumptions are unwarranted and undocumented. The facts I have presented are documented and indisputable. In point of fact, as indicated in my email, these expenditures were presented to the Board of Commissioners in October 2016. Obviously, it had nothing to do with you personally then or now. If, as you claim, you'll relentlessly guard and carefully consider every single county dollar, one would expect your support for policies and procedures to ensure consistent, accountable, and justified expenditures, including utilization of county vehicles. Third, you, as a public official, formally unveiled your goals for our county to the newspaper, Brookings officials, etc., etc. Clearly, you recommended imposing fiscal barriers which would absolutely prohibit environmental groups or organizations from legally exercising their rights. The punitive nature of this goal is of significant concern, since it appears to be antithetical to the intentions and requirements of state-mandated citizen involvement, Department of State lands, and LUBA. It is unreasonable to expect that such proposals to be ignored, whether they are referenced as bullet points or not. I have drawn no conclusions in any way, details of what you believe. I don't know what you believe. I have drawn conclusions on exactly what you have presented publicly and advocate that when people show you who they are, believe them. As far as your claim that you called my number a few months ago, purportedly leaving a voicemail offering to meet with me, I have no record nor recollection of such a call. Perhaps you're referencing campaign canvassing or voter solicitation calls. In closing, I am requesting to be informed of the role and function of your wife, Britt, as related to your elected office and rationale for her inclusion in official correspondence. Thank you. Despite documentation, despite the clarification, despite the fact that Commissioner Boyce's false claim during his campaign initiated this concern. His email, 215, states, "I do appreciate your willingness to communicate." A good thing. I find that rather condescending. I will spend some time in the next few days to get back with a response and answers to your questions, hopefully before the end of week. I have not received any response at all to date. I can offer that my wife, Britt, is a wonderful and committed volunteer who does all of my scheduling and, of course, is my legitimate chief counsel. I see her on almost everything and have been advised by legal counsel that as she has signed a Curry confidentiality statement, of course, protect the county, I am fully allowed to include her. More later, and thanks again. There is no Curry County confidentiality statement. In fact, the county form is the Curry County Volunteer Agreement. This agreement requires an address, volunteer assignment, department head approval, background or reference check, and interview, none of which exists for Commissioner Boyce's wife. Nor is there any documentation regarding acknowledgement of or agreement to comply with Oregon's conflict of interest laws. I'll point out that the Board of Commissioners, as far as I understand it, is a governing and policy-making board. And therefore, they do not individually hire or fire anyone. That any agreement about employment is discussed collectively and so forth. And in fact, if commissioners were allowed to hire at will, whether on a volunteer basis or not, I dare say you'd have a whole fan club out here from various contingencies. And so it isn't something that has ever been done. It's not my decision whether it should or should not be done, but it is an aberration to what has occurred in the past. In the interim, an email from Britt Boyce intended for her husband was erroneously sent to me. I'm not going to read that right now, but it was very accusatory. It was very offensive, and she has also apologized. My response to Commissioner Boyce, however, I will read, because it was meant to be sent to him and not to me. Obviously, and I do mean obviously, this email was not intended to be sent to me. Further, it is obvious that gross misrepresentations have been made of my inquiry. Not my inquiry, not demand. There's the word demand is being thrown around a bit much, in my opinion, regarding inclusions of your wife in our correspondence. Her assertion that Sue Gold put me up to say that is extremely offensive and perhaps libelous. It has been my experience that individuals who make unfounded and unreasonable accusations are the very individuals who are guilty of the actions they accuse others of committing. I sincerely appreciated your response of 215, copied to County Council, sent prior to this directive from your wife. One would hope that my genuine and justifiable inquiry would not be dealt with such vitriolic suspicion. Perhaps if all of our local elected officials and public employees, volunteer or paid, spent more time and effort in verifying facts, respecting differing opinions, and supporting collective solutions, our county would not be in the situation it is in. Excuse me. As a reminder, the citizens of Curry County are still at the top of the county organizational chart. Perhaps individuals, especially those living outside of our community, should be reminded of whom they should be working for. I assure you and your wife that I have never been put up by anyone. In addition, I do not rely on anyone to tell me what to do, how to do it, or write my presentations. I believe it is our civic duty to be involved in our political processes, and public officials are duty-bound to be responsive to the public. Further, that position is staunchly supported by the laws and regulations of our state and should not be denigrated by unwarranted assumptions and unjustifiable accusations. All this to say, it is absolutely unacceptable that genuine concerns and documented input from any taxpayer in Curry County is dealt with such assumptions, rash judgments, and unjustifiable accusations. Further, the undercurrents of hostility, suspicion, and potentially liable statements towards other elected officials are absolutely unacceptable and totally counterproductive to respectful and cooperative efforts. We need to be resolving issues, including unnecessary financial expenditures and biased opinions impacting the very survival of our county. I propose that any public official who dismisses constructive recommendations from the citizens they are elected to represent and/or exhibits bias against those who advocate for our unique and fragile environment and its essential economic benefits should recuse her or himself from representing Curry County. As far as promulgating qualifications or credentials based on genetics, my grandfather was first generation born in this country from Ireland, founded the Curb Exchange of stocks and bonds in New York. I would be the first to acknowledge that does not qualify me to run the American Stock Exchange. However, I am sincerely grateful that he did instill the fact that all we can truly control ourselves is our own integrity. My hope is that those who have been elected to represent us, advocate for us, and listen to our views do so with integrity rather than false pretexts and self-interests. I reiterate my requests for policies and procedures that I presented on 2/14/17. I thank you very much. If there are any questions, any comments?
Commissioner Gold?
Well, I guess my one comment in looking over what I've been seeing since I've been here is we seem to be having a lot of stuff in the background, backstabbing, that sort of thing, and we've got some serious problems here in Curry County. We need to be working together instead of against each other. That's my main comment.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Boyce?
So I've left on your desk several items here, and I think look at a policy on travel and all related expenses. I'm glad to hear you say that traveling outside of the county is warranted on occasion. The first thing I have here, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Now, this has just gone to us only, then I'm assuming these.
And
documents-
Council Huddle.
Well, true, but
And I'll
nobody in the audience or the public.
Yeah, and I'm going to read parts of it. I want to read everything because it'll take too long. I'll make sure that Ms. Madison gets my copies.
Okay.
Since November 10th, so as of March 10th, it'll be 4 months, excuse me. I've traveled outside of the county 7 times, twice to Portland, once to Eugene, once to Bandon, and of course twice to Salem. And the expenses so far have been under $2,000. We're well within our budget, and I think we have a balance in the commissioner's travel expense. Went over with Mrs. Crook yesterday, and I think we still have about 7,000 or 8,000 total through the end of June, and I think we'll come under that. Carl King would call that a contingency, so I hope we do come under the budget. I don't turn in any meals. I haven't turned in any receipts at this point. I have not used any county credit cards, fuel or otherwise. I've used my own vehicle a couple of times, and so that information is here and available. And then I have also a document here that I keep very good records, and it keeps track of all the miles that I have extended on the county car. So I'm going to give that to Ms. Madison if you want me to read any of this. I could just briefly go over Association of Oregon Counties. By the way, that included traveling to Portland Friday. It's tough because it's hard to travel and be out of the office at the same time. I completely agree with you. It is a full-time job here, and beside the fact that I enjoy being in the office every day, it is very difficult for me to justify leaving. So I do appreciate what you said there. But I have to emphasize, not traveling is not an option. And I think you covered that, and I again appreciate that, Ms. Wiley.
I'd like to comment. Again, this is not a personal issue. If it had been anybody else who was appointed to the AOC, the reason it was brought up is that every AOC meeting does not require direct attendance. There is electronic attendance available. It was presented as an issue to be addressed. Actually, I was trying to push it to be done because
and I appreciate that. And I
May I finish?
I'm sorry.
Thank you. So I am not the one to hold any of you accountable individually for what is spent in accord with budget. What I was requesting, and as I said, it went back to October when I first looked at what the expenditures was that policies and procedures are needed. That's up to you to develop. You're the governing body. You're the policymaker. It was never intended, nor did it mention you. All I asked.
Yeah, but all the language you use didn't put us on a good footing for really building an atmosphere of solving problems. I mean, the list here, beyond what you said the first time, that lack knowledge, unfair, unobjective. I mean, they're false pretext, self-interest. Having Commissioner Gold read that and you bypassing the normal public testimony, the process of filling out a slip and coming before the board, it just didn't seem ethical to me. And yes, it put us on our heels because of the language that you use. I don't understand why you wouldn't just pick up the phone, and I did call you and leave a message. I'm sorry if you didn't get it, but I give you my word that it was not some canvassing call. It was an attempt to say, you're an important part of this community. Can I talk to you and see what your goals are, what your vision is, what you see as the largest issues? That was an honest, sincere attempt. I'm going to read some of the other language you used, and that's what...
If you read it in context, I think it's fine. Otherwise, I'm viewing it as being attacked and being cut off.
Well,
What my initial thing was, which I was trying to say, Commissioner Boyce, was that I requested that the appointment be deferred. I didn't say until policies and procedures were established. It could have been anybody's name there. It could have been Huxley's name there. What I was trying to do was get the point across that I believe that our county would function in a more responsible and accountable...
No quarrel. No quarrel there. The bypassing the process, I think, is what...
I haven't bypassed any process.
When your information was read by Commissioner Gold, who is a friend of yours,
How do you know that?
By her own admission, she's told me in a positive way, not in anything negative. So of course I know that. You know, I'm not going to have one of my friends come here and...
You have your wife come.
That's okay. She's not going to be allowed...
Point of order,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
It's
She's not going to be allowed to come and challenge the other commissioners ever. None of my friends with their integrity. And you challenge my integrity, ma'am.
I did not.
If you say...
Okay, point of
Point of
order.
order.
Point of
Sure, we're
order.
getting into...
I'm sorry,
It's a
it is
pissing
turning into
Well,
a debate.
Right, the
And
technical way to address comments to each speaker is through the chair,
Yeah.
and that's what allows for order.
Anyway.
And Mr. Chair, while we're at it, it's 11:30 and we're supposed to wrap
Correct.
up, and we're
Well,
still
I'm
on
not
item
done.
number 4.
County council has the...
Well, no, I'm just, this is just a reminder,
point
Mr.
of
Chair.
order,
Just
but
a
let's
reminder,
not
Mr.
say
Chair.
we're
That's
not,
all.
You know,
Just a reminder, Mr. Chair.
next documents that you have, board members.
may I,
Yes, sir.
just a question about what are you thinking you have to remain to the, you know, with these comments that you want to make on this topic? Do you have a ballpark?
Amount of time needed?
Yes.
Whatever time it takes. We just listened for almost 20 minutes there,
Okay.
out of respect for her, and maybe we could get,
Do you
maybe we can
want
get
to
a
go ahead and
process
sit
started.
down then, Catherine, or you want
Excuse me, I
to? Okay.
was on the agenda for 15 minutes, and
Yeah.
that it was all formal. The only other
Yeah.
thing I want to say is that there is nothing unethical and has nothing to do with friendship. If I had sent it to Mr. Huxley, I would have been accused, as I was anyway, of friendship, or it has nothing to do with it. It has to do with how things are handled. And it is not unusual for any county commissioner, whether they're friends or relatives or anything, to present a requested reading into the record. It was not an attack on you. There is nothing there that attacks you. I recommended that policies and procedures be developed because of out-of-county travel. And they're needed, and I stand by that. Because your name was attached was because the AOC issues were coming back up again. And in my perception, previously, not that you would do it or intended to do it or anything, there were no policies and procedures. And I believe if you look at the detailed records, there are unnecessary and unwarranted expenditures. That's all. And I'm sorry that you took it the way that you did, but that is not what I wrote, nor what I intended.
Well, I'm sorry, just at the end of the letter, it's pretty tough.
Which letter?
The very first letter.
Okay.
So
Well,
I'll let
was
that,
nothing about the
and,
child.
you know, I got it, yeah, but we do have a disagreement on if the commissioner should be able to read something for John Doe citizen, friend, or otherwise. I think they have to come, unless they're unable, to come before the board as a standard policy. So I think we may have more agreement on that than what you think.
Would you repeat that, please? Just
I
what
don't
you
think
just
the
said.
commissioner should be able to pick and choose to read responses from the public. I think the public has to come before the board and go through the process of the slips as you have discussed, unless they want to do as Ms. Wiley just did, get on the agenda. Or are the
Confused,
commissioners
but
just going to
that's
read
okay.
at will different letters?
Well, not to get us going in a whole different direction, but it was a meeting, 1 or 2 general meetings ago. You read a 9 to 10 minute, which I thought was yours, 4-page document, and you can close by saying it was from Representative Smith.
Yes, an elected official and a former county
Well,
commissioner.
Well, okay, we have,
Okay,
again, we have
if you
either
want to set a
rules
policy
or not.
that does not allow that, we can
Just
do
my
that.
comment to say we have, we can't have it both ways, so.
And here are 2 emails that I will read very short that were inadvertently left out of the email chain, January 23rd, to Council Hull. For myself, hi again, my wife Britt will be spending time in my office helping as staff help on occasion.
Point of order, please, from the audience.
My wife Britt will be to Council Huddle. My wife Britt will be spending time in my office helping as staff help on occasion. Would she need to sign some sort of waiver in case she falls and twists an ankle or something? Smiles. Trying to properly cover all bases for Curry. Quickly, Mr. Huddle wrote back, I think we have an official county volunteer form in HR. And my wife signed it later that day. One paragraph I would read from here, Mr. Chair. I understand that I may come into contact with personal information about persons served by one or more county departments. I understand that such information is treated as confidential and agree not to share with others that information except as directed by supervisor or employee of the county. This agreement may need to be amended and updated, but overall, I think it's relatively safe for any volunteers, including commission members, committee members, and if we're going to go down the path of having everybody go through a background check, I think that needs discussion. It may be good policy for Curry County. And then one more thing, the last page on that, that Council Huddle sent me regarding 2 Oregon laws that Mrs. Wiley referenced, and understandable, or 244177, a public official may appoint, employ, promote, discharge, fire, or demote, or abdicate for the appointment, employment, promotion, discharge, firing, or demotion of a relative, goes on, from a position as an unpaid volunteer with the public body that the public official serves or over which the public official exercises jurisdiction or control. The next law, a little bit shorter, 179, a public official acting in an official capacity may directly supervise a person who is a relative or member to the household if the person serves as an unpaid volunteer. So I didn't want to bog us down a lot of paperwork. The only other thing I have here, board, is I have a job description that any county commissioner can use if they want a staff. It could be an intern, it could be a family member, it could be a friend. And that job description is open for your review. And there's a couple additional emails, apology from my wife to Miss Wiley. And I'm trying to speed through this, but I think it's important. Just a little further comment. I have been in close contact with Roadmaster Doug Robbins, and as late as yesterday, and probably had 3 or 4 conversations with him, getting to know him, and greatly admire and respect the job that he is doing. I'm tempted to read I mean, it's a full paragraph on nepotism and going back. I reached out to both commissioners, and I think this is truly related to this whole conversation. Commissioner Gold, appreciate your comment. And in fact, I've complimented both of you commissioners at different meetings. And I really challenge you to go, maybe today's a mild exception, but I challenge you to go back to any of the videos and look and see if there's any lack of respect, if there's any indifference to just good board conduct. Disagreement does not transcend into or translate into, an inability to relate well and try and get work done. So I could talk about that a lot. But I reached out to you, Commissioner Huxley, over a year ago to see if we could find some common ground and work together, and I was very determined to overcome divided government, which is what we have had here. The teammate concept has been mentioned, and it's just a challenge that we have to, I believe, really take a sincere effort to work toward. I mean, you look at the newspaper today, the Port of Brookings broke and Summer is shot. And so is it, I mean, that's a huge, huge issue for this county, and I'm working on that, and I need some help, and I know you're very much involved.
I know, Commissioner Boyce, excuse me, just a point of order. We were talking about policies and procedures with respect to volunteers, and you're starting to drift, and we are time constrained, Mr. Chair. I would just hope the board could wrap it up and move it along, please.
Thank you, County Council.
Okay, I need 2 minutes. One word that was used is antithetical, and I'd like to have evidence of that if I'm going to be accused of that. That means opposite, and I'm in the opposite opinion of some of the absolute radical preservationist ideologues that would suggest to us that a charred forest behind us is best for us, is best for our fish and game habitat, is best for our clean air, clean water, is best for our tourism and recreation. And so, yeah, there's some exceptionally good conservationist groups, but the preservationist groups that have brought the rural counties to their knees and would suggest that, yeah, a burned up area is best for us all. Yeah, I'm going to be opposite of that. And somehow, if you want responsible forest management, you must be therefore for strip mining. I think we all can accept that everybody in this room loves the reason we live here, and will fiercely protect that. I started to bring up what the issue should be for this commission, and I realize I may have been slightly out of sequence there. Solutions are the question, and we need to get to work immediately and get our priorities right. And when it comes to David Brocksmith, yes, he brought in helped to bring in $400,000 through FEMA to work for the Port of Brookings after the sinkhole. He brought in helped to bring in 1.6 million for, and I don't have to defend him, but to say that he hasn't been effective, I surely am not going to travel like he has traveled, and I don't think I would recommend that for any of the board members here. But the 1.6 million for the consolidation of the port dredges is a big one, and you know, as I mentioned, I'll be at the SOD Task Force Friday, and the state, the federal government through Senator Merkley's put up $250,000. And as I conclude, preserving the natural beauty of the invasive species, that we are dealing with here, from Himalaya blackberries to the sudden oak death syndrome. It is a major, major thing that we need to be really in tune with and involved. And that, of course, not a conclusive list. There are everything from Scotch broom to pampas grass. Gorse in the northern part of our county is incredible. Thank you.
Okay. We had on public comments on 5B, we had one slip that had been completed by Britt Boyce. Would you like to? Sure. And this would be three minutes, please.
At the most. I hesitate saying anything because of the time constraint. So, I'm Britt Boyce. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I've fallen on my face with a mistake email that was sent out. I've fallen on my face before. I've apologized for it. At least I'm trying to run forward to do something good. I apologize to Ms. Gold. She couldn't have been more gracious as well. And Mr. Huxley, and I apologize to you, Commissioner Boyce, for any trouble that I have caused. I just wanted to make clear, as far as being my husband's chief counsel, that was brought up, you know, that's in life and family and marriage, and that's not speaking about, I don't counsel my husband. He doesn't ask me how to handle county business. That's not my place, nor speaking about county business to anyone but my husband appropriate. And I guess just two things. I have all sorts of things that I could say, but I think there's just too many words, and I'm just going to have to live out my actions and let that speak if I'm still allowed to serve. I'm glad we're all proud of our grandfathers and fathers. And my dad used to say, you can complain about the United States of America, or you can contribute to the United States of America. And Britt, you were raised to contribute. If you choose to complain about the United States of America, please leave the United States of America. Now that's a pretty wild statement, but that was part of who my dad was, and I'm doing my best to contribute. I appreciate all involvement from people in the county and in the country, and I am grateful that I have a moment to speak. And I want to just thank you for letting me be a volunteer in this beautiful county. And lastly, I would like to suggest a solution, because another thing my dad said is, you know, criticism or complaint without a solution offered is really a bit of an attack, and you need to offer a solution if you're going to complain. You know, anyone can complain. It's America about what you want to. He asked me to offer a solution. I don't know if it's possible or not. I'd love, because I was so excited to come volunteer here, I would love, and anybody who presented prior to me is welcome, to hold a teamwork seminar. I've been listening to all sorts of fabulous speakers, and I will bring food. I will pay for the food. It could be fun. We could hold it right in here. Obviously, I'd need a lot of permission, but I have a vision for that. I have a dream that we all love coming to work here, that we all are proud to be a part of the solution. And I have a dream that before too long, I will see everyone getting along. Now, call me Pollyanna, and I am not perfect, obviously, but I would just love that. So I just wanted to say that. So thanks for listening.
Thank you. The third, that was put under public comments as 5C was put there, again, it was an agenda routing slip, but there were nothing was attached. It was just a Food Systems of South County presentation by Mary, and I'm not sure, is it Bosshart?
And she couldn't attend. If possible, can I speak?
Okay. Well, again, the policy, and I've been through it every single meeting for the last 2 or 3 meetings, is for general meetings or workshops. We went through whatever the code number was. If there are no attachments, it's not accepted. So
she drove-
so I'm going to stand on that, especially with where we are. Now, this could be a public comment limited to 3 minutes, but this is not going to go on for 15 minutes. At least I would not approve it. Okay, so if, again, as a public comment, I have no problem. It's just it was a sort of unorthodox way, but as a public comment, I don't have a problem for 3 minutes. Do you,
3
Commissioner?
minutes is fine.
Commissioner Boyce?
I don't know why, it's 11:04 down there, why we
Okay.
restrict them to 3 minutes. It drove all the way from Brookings.
You're missing the point, Commissioner Boyce.
No, I'm
But-
not.
So we have 2 that will accept 3 minutes. You may have 3 minutes.
Does the subject matter interest us, I hope?
My name's Connie Hunter. I live in South Curry County. Glad to be a citizen of Curry County and glad to be here to talk very briefly about the Brookings Harbor Community Helpers Emergency Food Bank. Part of the reason you didn't get this attachment sooner had to do with the fact that the food bank has had a lot of crisis and we've also had some of our board members and Mary herself not feeling well. Anyway, 2016 was pretty exciting. I got a call just before, the day before Thanksgiving, and the alarm bells were sounded that they were on the verge of a crisis, a food crisis. They were running out of food. Ray's closed. That took things to another problem. But there were a series of things that happened. When ShopSmart went under, 6,000 pounds of food were no longer coming to the food bank. In the meantime, while this is happening, while the food donations are being cut back, we're also seeing a rise in the number of people using the food bank to the point where it's getting very close to 2,000 people a month using an emergency food bank in South Curry County. So I know our food bank helpers felt like they had their fingers in a dike, keeping that crisis from happening. So they called me because I have a relationship in the community with a lot of people, including Al Unzinger, who happens to be a veteran, who's their chair, and had worked with them, giving them advice on grants that they could seek, including the one that they wrote to get their grant. I have since been added to their board of directors. But when Ray's went under, 2,000 pounds of food, less a month, continuing to increase the number of people using the food bank to the extent where the last week of November, they did not have milk at our emergency food banks. We immediately got on the horn. We got the city involved. We made sure that we made a presentation at the city council to let them know what was going on in South Curry County. We were able to get our appropriations changed at the state level very quickly. The city was on board to support us, and we reported on a Monday at city council, and that following Wednesday, our van was stolen, as were computers and a very minimal amount of cash. So they have gone through some of the hardest things that a community organization can go through, and they stepped up. We were writing grants on New Year's Eve. We were writing grants on Christmas Day. We were doing things to make sure that those 2,000 people got fed. Right now, probably one of the most significant things that I can tell you is that 27 people were added again last month in the homeless category. I do have some handouts, and I gladly share them with people in the audience. But here are three. We have brave people.
We have,
working.
you have 4. Go put one into the record for 4 copies, please.
4 copies,
Yeah,
yes,
and,
sir.
and someone
Thank you.
keep one for the record.
Reminding me of that, Commissioner Huxley. Anyway, as of December, there were the actual number of people using the food banks was 3,350 adults, 1,140 children, with a total clients of 4,490. Of course, January has happened and those numbers have increased slightly. And the homeless clients, where it says 487, we have not added those additional 27 in there. And I apologize for going on a little bit longer, but we have come up with changes, fundraising goals, and our efforts, along with donated food and pledges and the money that came in during that crisis. And we so appreciate the Curry Coastal Pilot getting that word out and staying on that subject, because he made a huge difference in our ability to fundraise. And we raised, if you add all of the viable pledges, which are things like Fred Meyer saying they'll contribute that $3,000 over a period of 3 months, $90,000 in 90 days. And I can tell you that. Here for the food bank in Brookings Harbor, and I'm sorry they couldn't be here.
Thank you. Okay, so we're into the consent calendar with the removal of one item, which was 6C, Planning Commission appointments, although there was a supplemental from Planning Director Carolyn Johnson on that. We'll deal with that at the end. So do we have a motion from the commissioners to approve as
I move that
included?
we approve the consent calendar as written, as amended, actually.
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
Okay. I would, just for brief comment, not to pull anything out, there was on this memo of understanding, and I see the representative from the district attorneys here, this was signed. There was, and I had great, I'm not going to get into it here because we don't have the time, as far as a significant disregard for the public meeting law in having this signed, and it didn't seem to raise any issues from, some members in this audience that have a tendency to make, big things out of little things. But I would refer you back to that as an example of what a public meeting law infraction is. The remedy has been issued by, or taken care of by, county council. I did ask him by what authority his recommendation was, and again, we don't want to do that again, and I think we pretty well agreed to that. But it has been signed, although the full, complete signed one wasn't included in the packet. Everything was signed as of the 22nd. So that said, I'll call for the question.
Aye.
Motion in a second.
Aye.
Aye. On administrative actions, we had, again, we've moved out 11A and 11, well, no, we've moved out 11A. 11B was the SCDC
Is it
inventory and
7?
evaluation of county office space. You want to come forward? And identify yourself, please.
Sean Gibbs with SCDC.
Didn't recognize you. Cut your hair.
I know I cut my hair. It's a different look. Feels good. So, so any questions about the evaluation that I put together?
Commissioner Boyce?
Were you at some point going to do the fairgrounds, and so that's kind of on your docket to continue
Yeah.
on that? This is a great report. Also, the old Coos Curry office, I think you're on that, Sean.
I can do that as well. I haven't done it yet, but I can.
Is it in your plans, though?
The creek, yeah. This one right here?
Yes,
Yeah, it
all the
is.
county.
Sorry.
Yeah. And I thought you did a really good job, SCDC, on the comparables. The only concern I have, Mr. Chair, is maybe not even a concern, but just private companies that are that have a lot of office space for rent. I want to make sure the county is not ever perceived as undercutting them. I mean, the demand right now, unfortunately, Gold Beach, I don't think the supply greatly exceeds the demand. But
Yeah.
if you're aware of that, then that would be all I have at this time.
Commissioner Gold?
I like the idea that we're being consistent in our rentals rather than willy-nilly about what's going on. I think that shows the public that we're being fair and equitable with everybody.
And equitable, if I might add, to ourselves, because it was significantly greater for valid statistical reasons than we had rented recently.
Mm-hmm.
And a question I had, I mean, like over twice as much. That this does not include, and this is a question, this does not include utilities?
No, so the assessment I did actually included a full-service lease, which would include all
so it
utilities
does.
except phone and internet.
Okay,
Yeah.
and does it include any furniture?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay,
So-
because I know we've, in many cases, just provide the furniture too, which, I mean, that's great for somebody that's leasing, but if it's, if it's not included, then we need, to
Absolutely.
be very aware of that.
And these rates, they're meant to be negotiable,
Correct.
obviously, for
Correct.
demand and
Okay, but I
supply
thought it was a very good, thorough report, good map, so we know
Mhm.
map-wise where they're located and what the square footage is.
Yeah.
I thought it was very good.
And all those photos are online, they're public, they're hyperlinked in that report, so you can click on them and you can
Great.
see more photos of the area, or the office space, so.
So, do we call for the question to
Oh.
accept? Oh, County Council?
Well, you do need a motion, and
Okay.
this agenda item has a order at the end, and it's to appoint a blank.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're correct,
As,
you're correct.
as the
Yes.
manager for the lease space. And I think in the report, if you read between the lines, it gives you a choice of either the community development director or the facilities maintenance supervisor. And so I think that would be the real motion by the board on this item.
I know my preference would be to have it where the interface was for this study with the, the community development director. So I would ask, do we have a motion?
I move that we put the community development director in charge of the rentals of the office space.
I'll second.
Call for the question?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, it's a good
Thank you.
report, Sean.
Thanks.
Agenda item 7C is a termination consideration of assistant county council contract. County council?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and this was put on the agenda at a request of a commissioner. This is possible, but we do use our assistant county counsel. They are very valuable, and just yesterday they delivered a check for, I think, $48,000, which is twice the amount we pay them on an annual basis. That was a collection matter they did for some road department work on
Oh, yes.
on,
yeah.
on North
On that-
Chetco Road, I think, or North Bank
that
Chetco Road.
stormwater
Sure.
issue?
So it was, yeah, it was where the road was washing out, and they did a collection action against the private property owner who had undermined our lateral support to the road. And so they're very effective, and then the issue with terminating them, it will put a increased strain on my office. The outside county counsel, the assistant county counsel, is used very much for the airport. There's a lot of issues with tenants and conditions out there, as well as things like this. And also, my goal was to use them for the code enforcement, which I thought would be, in place, and for all the reasons previously discussed, it's not. But if we do start doing code enforcement, that was my goal there. And so and then also, your county council office is one lawyer, that's me, and I cannot be here every day of the year. I'm gonna get sick, I'm gonna take vacation. So the alternative to having the on-call assistant county counsel would be to pay an outside lawyer, and I think I'd recommend this one, but you'd be paying them on an hourly rate, and they would do the typical time and hour billing. And that would be at a significantly higher hourly rate typically than what we're getting on this thing. So it's a board decision, the board can do it, but there will be consequences if we don't, and also I think they are doing a good service for the county council's office at a pretty reasonable rate. I did in conversations mention that if we're looking at budget cuts, I did say this would likely be a budget cut that my office would put forward as a possibility. I think it's $24,000 a year, so that's something that I would put forward as a budget cut. So all we're doing with this item here is kind of getting ahead of the curve on the budget item. So that's really the all I have on this item, Mr. Chair.
So what's your recommendation?
My recommendation is that we leave it in place until the budget process. I think the board's doing a lot of thinking about items, and properly so, of where we can save money and where we can realize whether it's efficiencies, consolidations, et cetera. But I think the orderly way to do that would be through our budget process. And again, I did have the conversation that this would be, in theory, one area that we could look at to cut from the legal department budget. But it does leave us with, either no coverage or coverage at an increased cost. But again, if I'm gone 2, 3, 4 weeks a year, would that necessitate paying all that money? I don't, $24,000, I don't think so. But at the same time, some legal services from our department, which, aren't to the level I prefer to have them myself, but, probably like every department here at the county, we do, we have to see what's the work's coming in, kind of do some prioritizing, do it as best we can, and some things have to just wait, or, sometimes we have to decline being able to do something. So, so we'd see a little more of that, and that may be just the new reality for the county after the budget process. But I think the position's budgeted now. Unless the board has some idea in mind for where, what are we, March, so it'd be March, April, May, June, 4 months of 2,000, so that's, sorry, $8,000, thank you.
That's a tough one.
So right. So anyway, if the board has some idea where that would go, and I know the board just retained outside counsel to do our labor negotiations, and I don't know if that was budgeted before, so maybe they need some money for something. So for right now, we're looking at 4 months of what I just talked about as far as needing supplemental assistance in the legal department. So it's really a board decision. I think if the board doesn't have an idea where they need that $8,000 over the next 4 months, I think leaving it in place, because my hunch is I don't have anything planned, but I may be absent on some level of vacation or something else during the next 4 months. It's just a possibility, but I don't have any plans. So that's really all I have on this. It was brought to the board as a request. And so again, I can, but I think unless the board really has an idea where they need that money, leaving it in place would be my preference. So.
My comment, I assumed, wrongfully so, because I didn't understand why it was on here. I assumed that you put it on the agenda. I just didn't know why you would do that, because we looked at the equivalent hourly rate for this a couple of years ago. And this is $25 an hour is what this rate is for an attorney licensed to practice in Oregon. So it was like, I thought it was a bargain.
Again, I
in
think,
my opinion.
I agree with that, Mr. Chair, but because what I'm think might have happened on this was that we are just in a, kind of a proactive mode on getting ahead of some of our fiscal issues. And so I was accommodating, and it's just for purposes of discussion, really, I think, but that's why it's on there. And so I did it as a, just for purpose of discussion, so.
And
Mr.
that was
Chair.
me that brought it up. I'll just, because I'm always looking for ways to save money. But after this discussion, I agree with you. Keep it in place.
Well, then I think if there's no motion, that item would just not proceed forward, so.
County, Commissioner Boyce?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm a little nervous not having a backup, but correct me if I'm wrong, if I understood you correctly, we could negotiate just a per piece as needed and not have a retainer here?
I think we could, but as the chair said, this hourly rate is.
Oh, there were discussions a couple of years ago too, and it was 100 and, I don't remember, but it was $100+ an hour.
But like, I think my preference would be to analyze this issue as well as other cost-saving issues during the upcoming round of budget discussions, and that's, I think, the appropriate process to analyze. And again, the Citizens Budget Advisory Committee also just sent out a questionnaire of how you can save and where you can. So these thoughts are on my mind, and it was a frank discussion with Commissioner Gold, and she said, well, if we can save it now, why don't you just put it on there and, as an accommodation. And of course, it would have to be a board discussion just like this. So that's really how we got here, and that's what we're doing here. But it wasn't, I didn't have any strong opposition to it. It would kind of hamstring my shoestring operation already, but.
Hamstring or shoestring?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I did say that. So.
See, and I didn't realize it had been analyzed previously, and
Okay.
I'm good with what we've got.
Okay, so if there's no motion, we can just move on to the next item, and no action will take place on that. So
we'll kind of give up $8,000 in the next 4 months until we decide if we want to change this.
If
Well,
We're
I
probably
don't
not
want to
going
give
to
up.
need their services.
Okay, so I didn't quite understand the question. I have to, if you could say when we give up.
We just let it go as is, and it'll cost us a couple thousand a month for the next 4 months until we decide if we want to change it.
Correct, and they will continue to do the services that they perform, which, in the last month, they brought us in twice the amount we're spending to replenish the road funds for some expenses of where some people caused us damage. They did a collection action for us.
But the
recovered some.
contract
Thank
is
you.
for 18 hours
Right.
of legal time per week.
Okay.
That's what the contract is, per week.
So, again, yes, that's what's happening, and I think they're performing a good service, and from my point of view, they're needed. But again, if we're forced to make budget cuts, this would be something that would be, and again, that's where I think it's a subject for a different time. So, that's all I had, so. something
Just
that
to
we-
let you know, it's $25.64 an hour. Just got my
That's
little
how many
calculator out.
work days are in a month?
Well, no, I just said 52 weeks.
Okay.
So, that's all I had on that.
Okay,
item.
so we'll just defer that or table that.
Indefinitely,
At this
or
time,
until the
indefinitely.
budget, perhaps. Sure.
That-
Thank you very much.
Okay, commissioners?
I'm good with
Table
it.
this?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's,
You have a go.
okay. The next one is 7D, resolution setting a hearing for Harbor Sanitary District annexation for the FedEx property off East Benham in Harbor.
Yes, Mr. Chair,
Counsel?
this is my item as well, and so this has been an item where the FedEx building, you know, they need sanitary service, and to do so, they need to annex into the sanitary district. And so this includes the current FedEx as well as, I think, another piece of property adjoining that. And this does not conduct the annexation. This sets the hearing to take public testimony on the proposed annexation. And that hearing is set for a future date as set forth in the item. So it's a very basic idea here.
So do we have a motion?
I move that we accept the resolution.
I'll second, Mr. Chair.
Any further discussion? Call for the question?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we have, that we did not pull then at this point. It's Administrative Action 7E. Juvenile Director Trost.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners. As of 3/15 of this month, we will have an opening in our juvenile department that is essential to our department's functionality. This position has been historically titled Operations Manager at a salary level of N9. However, in respect to our current budget crisis and with intent to save the county money, I'm requesting that we fill this position with an administrative assistant position salary level of U8. The job description that's before you will require 4 revisions. It includes language that was relative to economic development that needs to be removed. Yesterday, I, County Council, HR, County Accountant, and the Community Development Director met to discuss and make these changes and satisfy all parties. The revisions are as follows. If you have it in front of you, on page 1, under Position Summary, Sentence 1, removal of the language and overall assistance on economic development projects.
No, we've lost, and I'm looking.
Oh, I apologize.
Commissioner Brown's lost the screen
Gold,
too. I've lost
Commissioner
it. Our
Gold.
Commissioner Gold, sorry.
And my
I've
screen's
lost the
doing
screen.
well.
So,
What was it, excuse me, what was the heading again, or subheading?
This is agenda item 7E,
No, I got that, I'm
and
sorry.
it's on page 145.
Thank you.
I think that one was submitted.
You just solved the problem, thank
Well, no,
you.
this is revised, not the original.
Well, no, what's happening is the computer's not coming up right, so.
Here you are,
Blank stuff.
Commissioner Gold. This is the job description that was requested, and it included items such as
Right,
economic development
right.
projects.
I knew what was going on there.
Okay.
so.
Okay, so we've lost,
My computer is still working.
mine
Mine
I
is.
lost the signal. Well, no, but not with this. I'm not using this now. I haven't been for a while. No, I'm sorry. No, I lost the,
agenda.
and I had the same screen that Commissioner Gold has here,
And mine is working.
so,
It's okay, I can see. the-
well,
I can get a
But he's got-
printout.
He's got the
we have.
paper copy here,
We
so
have
that's
a
good.
revised document that I've just seen at this point.
Correct, and what the juvenile director was going to do is walk you through the changes, and he's verbally describing the changes.
If you'd like me to continue, I
Thank
can.
you. I
Yes,
think so.
absolutely. So, under Position Summary, in Sentence 1, there was the removal of the language and overall assistance on economic development projects. Under Essential Duties and Responsibilities, number 9 on the top of page 2 was removed from the original document, and it stated, assist in preparation for economic development reports, technical research studies, prepares statistical reports, and supporting data for drafting or revising local legislation and plans. So we removed that sentence out. In the desirable qualifications section found on the bottom of page 2, we removed the last part of the last sentence where it says "and community development." And then on page 3, in the first sentence, at the end of the sentence, removing "for the board." And those were the
Taken out.
those were the revisions that we had made as a group to this job description to make it conducive to fulfill this requirement. So I'm requesting the approval of the job description that's before you with these 4 revisions and permission to post the position for hire. If a suitable candidate is found, I will return to the board for approval, for hire approval per the hiring freeze order. So thank you for your time and consideration.
I'll move, Mr. Chair, when you're ready.
I'll second that.
That's a motion to approve the revised job description as submitted today. Thank you.
I have, again, I had some issues at the management meeting yesterday on the subject. I still, having looked at it, well, I haven't read through, for the first time. I would have some questions that I'd like to ask people, but those are my comments. We have a motion and a second. So I will call for the question.
Aye.
Aye.
No. So we're going to move now to
Thanks, Mr. Trost.
before we get, okay, we have presentations. We had earlier agenda item, well, there's proclamations is agenda item 8. There are no proclamations. There's no new business under agenda item 9. There's no old business under agenda item 10. There are no presentations to the board. We've had those earlier under agenda item 11. I think before I get to commissioner updates, I would like just to briefly touch base, and because there was a copy here this morning at our desk for a supplemental agenda report, and it had to do with, you want to come up on this?
Certainly.
And identify yourself, please.
Yes, I'm Carolyn Johnson, Community Development Director.
Thank you.
And I believe you're speaking to consent calendar item 6C regarding Planning Commission appointments.
Correct, and that was, deferred.
Yes.
Basically, but this document that was on our computers this morning, I think addresses that general subject and some other things too. So if
Yes,
you'd
I
like to
sent this
go
to the
ahead
Bach
and-
office Monday and to you yesterday.
And
If I can break this down, the Planning Commission positions were not advertised on the county website, and they are now advertised. What I'm asking you to do is not take action today to appoint any commissioners and allow some time for advertisement. I'm looking to April 5th, the day that you could consider doing that. The advertisement is on the county webpage, and it provides a lot of detail as to what these positions do, how many are available, et cetera. So I'd like to ask you to hold off on taking any action on appointments until some time goes by so folks can make their applications pursuant to the advertisement. That's the first thing I'd like to suggest to you. The second is when I looked through the many boards and committees that were on the website, there's 18 of them, and there were a lot of them that they need some work. They need to be updated. There's things that are expiration dates that have come and gone. Some commissions and committees aren't necessarily in effect anymore. And I think it would be worth your time to have that looked at. I don't think it's as critical as this Planning Commission update, and to get that done, because we've got some heavy-duty work going on with the zoning code that the commission's been working on this last 7 months. So that's definitely a priority, but I would like you to tuck that away and think about it. And then the last item that I'm asking about, and I'd like to come back to you mid-April if you were interested in coming up with just a very brief policy or a procedure on how these board appointments are advertised and appointed, a little procedure, so there's some consistency throughout. So those are the 3 things I'm asking about, but the very first one is the most important. So.
And I think the first one was already done. We removed the item from the consent agenda. There are no appointments being made, and
Correct.
I think you're letting them know that
Right.
you'll be bringing them back on April.
Yes, but I also wanted you and the public to know that the positions are advertised on the website.
Okay.
So,
Do you need a motion to approve her
I think so.
request? It sounds to me like it's already been approved by
I think
taking it off the agenda.
I think it has, but the other two items might bear some discussion. I don't know if at
Or
today's
maybe
meeting or
just
some
not
other
so much a
time.
motion, but consensus
Sure.
to proceed
Mhm.
as you
Okay.
would like to do, versus I don't think we necessarily need a motion.
Now, we are in the process of updating the website, is that correct?
Correct.
So that, I think, could be done quite easily when we're in that process.
And I have, and I'll give you a copy, well, here. It's a existing document. It's order number 20266. And it's back to October 21st of 2015. And this is when these committees were addressed, and it, you know, again, we do these orders and then we don't follow them, basically. And that's what happened with this order, but it's
I'll follow
a
up.
start to
Okay,
take a look at
thank you.
that. Yeah, I'll let you have this,
Okay, thank
printout.
you.
But that's, it's an existing public record, and it can be located on the Commissioner Journals.
okay.
So
thank you.
again, it's order number 20266 of October 21st, 2015, but just on this subject.
Okay. Well, thank you. Maybe the work is already done.
So, no.
Okay.
But it-
Maybe we
But
just
it's
have
a
to
s-
follow
yeah.
our own
yeah.
policies.
So I will be back to you then on April 5th with applications for your planning commission.
Okay.
Okay,
All right, thank you.
thank you.
So we're at commissioner comments. It's 12:16. I would hope that let's say by 12:30 we can adjourn. So it's 12. County Council?
Well, thanks, Mr. Chair. If I could just give a department activity report while you're doing what you're
Sure.
doing there. Just wanted to talk to the earlier topic about policies and procedures. The board has a work session set for a travel policy to consider and adopt, and I think that was a consensus of the board when the travel policy was brought up. So that's, I think, set for later this month, or I think actually March 22nd, I think is when it's set for, but I'll
It
double
is.
check.
Yeah, I'd have to
So,
look.
so the board was already on,
Okay.
at a consensus level to bring something back to discuss about travel. So I just wanted to make sure that got in the record, because it sounded like when Ms. Wiley spoke that we weren't of a mind to consider her request for a travel policy, so. I just
Well,
wanted-
I'm not sure. I'm not,
Okay.
excuses, I don't
Sure.
know that she was aware of that.
Correct.
Nor I don't know that the other two commissioners are aware. You
Actually, I
sent
was,
me-
because I looked at the
Okay.
board.
Well, that's right. I showed,
But-
because
Sure. But I just wanted to make
Yeah.
sure we got it on the record today
Okay.
that's something that the board, I think, had consensus on adopting, and the staff has put it on for a work session. So.
Did you
And let me
bring-
just say one thing about
Okay.
policies. Is that okay if I do that? We've got all these policies in a book, but they're in no order that anybody can access them, or it's kind of hard.
Well, or disseminated, I mean, we need to,
It needs to be organized in such a way that they can be useful
and
for us.
people made aware of it. I just happened to recall this one because of, I was here.
Mhm.
But it's like, a lot of these, we located one ordinance in the decorum thing a couple of weeks ago that went back to 2001 and had been in place since 2001. So it's a matter of somehow
Getting them all
learning
in one place and
and
indexing them.
disseminating and training, people here, or making them aware and training that these are, available, they exist, and if they're back to 2001, they may not be, they may need to be rewritten. I think we have a lot there in that category. But Commissioner Boyce?
So we're on commissioner comments now, because I'm satisfied that.
Yes, and it is,
we're
you're
gonna-
going first. I sort of
Yeah.
flip-flop back and forth, and on the 15th, it's Commissioner Gold. So you're first on commissioner comments here.
Thank you. The 22nd, might be able to participate by phone. That, depending on when our plane lands, because I didn't think we were going to have a workshop meeting. I rescheduled my family's deal that I lost out in January. So I'm going to Canada. We're going to Canada to see my oldest son and his family. But I will do my best to be able to participate by phone if it cannot be rescheduled. Of course, I'm very interested in this subject, very interested. So just take a note of that if you would, please. Other commissioner comments. Security cameras on this level and down below, I think at some point need to be updated. We don't have anything on this level, and apparently they're not working properly on the bottom level. Another thing I'm going to bring up, maybe the next general meeting, is an issue that is gaining a little bit of concern for me, and that's the state of sanctuary counties. Apparently, 30 of the 36 counties in Oregon are listed under the state authority of and as are sanctuary counties, and Curry is technically listed. I don't know what that means for us, but if you Google that, the information is pretty eye-opening, and it may not be something to be alarmed about, but I think we need to be prepared to work with our law enforcement people and be tuned in to what the consequences may or may not be on that.
So we are listed as a sanctuary county?
That's
I
correct.
think there was 32 or 31 or 32 counties, and it was all through the sheriff on the same day on online
So
documentation.
question, was
there,
that
so.
brought before the Board of Commissioners?
I don't think so.
County
You okay
council?
then?
No.
No, I don't think so either. And again, my thinking on this as we're talking about it, and I'll go double check, I think it's based on an Oregon law that says that there's a statute in Oregon that says that local law enforcement cannot be used to enforce immigration laws or something. And I don't know who came up with this designation, but a very broad reading of that then would make the whole state of Oregon look like a sanctuary. So then, I don't know though. So that's where, if the board's interested, I can look into that and try to get the background. But I am aware of a statute that says local law enforcement cannot be used, resources cannot be used to enforce immigration laws. So that may be some of the genesis of why there is a designation that we never had designated ourselves as, but it would only because of some overarching state law that would apply to us by default. But I'll take a look into that.
Okay.
And maybe Commissioner Boyce, we can visit, and you can show me where you found that designation and who's designating us as that, and we can inquire further.
Just so you're already up on a little bit is refreshing to me, because I don't know what it is going to mean. And so, Council Huddle, I will look forward to that opportunity. And yeah, I mean, we need to be aware of is it federal law versus state, and how we might be in the middle.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gold?
I've got a couple of things here. I was just wondering about the status of the minutes. Usually in meetings that I've always been in, on boards, et cetera, we have a place for approval of the minutes, and I know our accountant here needs this for our auditor's report. So I was just wondering what the status was of getting those minutes approved every time. And I know by law the minutes don't have to be word for word. We just need to talk about what motions and so forth were approved or rejected. So just a comment. And also I'm interested in getting a county manager, and there's going to be a workshop on 3/29 where the job description will be presented as well as an ordinance to look over. And another concern that I have, as looking through the cell phone bill yesterday, I was noticing that there were 48 cell phones listed, and we have a cost of about $3,000 per month for cell phones. So I think that's something we need to look at as far as the budget and so forth.
Did you check mine? It's pretty,
No, I wasn't
pretty dormant.
I wasn't checking who had called or any of that. I'm just wondering
That's a good
Do
point.
all of those
I
need to be
think there's a
issued?
basic charge of about $60, $50 to $60. a
Right,
phone.
right, I
So it's,
noticed
you
that,
know,
but then I guess my
That's
question
if it's
is,
not used.
are all those people necessarily
Okay.
in need of a cell phone?
Okay, did you have anything else, or?
No, I think I've said.
County
my
Council,
piece.
did you have anything else, or?
Other than, I'll bring back a report on the minutes at the next
Okay.
meeting.
I'm going to make very quickly here. 26. I'm not on the February 1st meeting during Commissioner comments. There were several from Commissioner Boyce questioning certain dollars and so forth and so on. I'm not going to go into it. It started at 4 hours and 34 minutes into that video, and it went to 5 hours and 6 minutes into the video. I assume because on several of those you said you would check and get back to me if basically if I was not correct in my statement. So I'm assuming, because I haven't heard back, that my statements or my figures were correct. And if
What
you would-
meeting were you referencing here?
February 1st, again, starting at 4 hours, 34 minutes into the video. And secondly, there were one of those items, but I don't have time to go into it now because we're late and we need to end the meeting. I'll address that at the next meeting. And lastly, and I'll read a letter into the record next time also. Well, I'll put it in the record. It was from Nelson Sprague in regards to some of these ODOT repairs on these roads. And I can relate to him because I had a brand new car and coming around this one corner about 6 weeks ago, they had again repaired it. They didn't clean up the aggregate, and it was like a shotgun spray, and $2,500 damage later to the brand new car. County Council?
Mr. Chair, I did have one more thing. I thought one of the commissioners might bring it up, and it goes back to the volunteer position in general. It's not about any individual person, but there was a question about, under the ethics law, could a public official appoint a relative? And if they're a volunteer, the ethics law says that's not a conflict of interest. But that being said, the ethics law doesn't empower the public official to do the appointment.
Correct.
So what I need to do is check into, and I know I said this isn't about any individual, but we only have the one issue that we're looking at here is how do we appoint, because as we know, we just had a hiring freeze and only commissioners make the appointments. They have to approve every appointment. But the general rule of any of you commissioners is that the individual commissioners do not have any power of appointment or removal acting on your own. And so what I need to do is see what was the official method of having, this volunteer
how did they get
appointed. And I think it went through our HR department, but it's just interesting. And then as the Bach admin supervisor, if this volunteer is going to be working in the Bach office, who is their supervisor, who manages their work? I think we really do need to have some sideboards and parameters and look. And I'll try to bring back some recommendations and findings at the next meeting as well. Just in the abstract, to just talk about this process, because as the lawyer for the county, it interests me as to, how do we make a legal appointment of someone who then is a volunteer, and we saw the form and it has a lot of whistles and bells to it. So just want to look into it in the abstract because it actually caught my interest, and I wasn't involved in the process to begin with, other than looking at the form and seeing that it had the confidentiality like Commissioner Boyce talked about.
So if it helps, Britt would have no intentions of working in the Bach office.
Well, I know, but
And would
I
be.
understand what you have to look at.
And I appreciate that.
I hear what you're saying as well, but technically, the people like Summer Madison does things for individual commissioners. I do things for individual commissioners. We work in the Bach office. By working for the commissioners, I think she's sort of working in the Bach office or an individual commissioner. But again, I'm sorry, Commissioner Boyce, I didn't mean to take up this much time, and I know we have other meetings to get to. But I just have some questions I would like to track down as far as to what is the job, what is the volunteer assignment, and then who gets to make the appointment, and what is the process for making that appointment. For instance, could Commissioner Gold appoint somebody as a volunteer? I'm just not sure that any individual commissioner has the power of appointment over any individual department head. But I looked through, while we were going through this, I was looking through our personnel regs, and we don't have a section on volunteers per se, so that means they just get treated like anyone else, but I don't think so, because they don't get all the same rights of other employees. So
I did notice that she would be covered under workers' comp, and that seems like just,
I think that's state law.
I guess one of
Okay.
my concerns is,
I know.
Well,
it's hard for commissioners to make a decision without all three.
Mm-hmm.
We can't just go out and make a decision without
well, we
all
might
three.
just,
Well, you're going to get back to
I-
us
I
with
just-
some legal
I would-
guidance, and
yep,
that's
I'll
what we.
I'll talk to HR, I'll
Yeah,
look at our
sure.
regs, I'll check around, but it just, I wasn't involved in the process, it's come to my awareness, and I just feel like I need to do that for the
I'd be
board.
curious too, how many of those, how many active volunteer agreements are there? I
Sure.
have no idea.
Exactly.
None,
Just,
no
and
idea.
and our, we don't necessarily have a volunteer policy in our current employment
And we
personnel rules, and I
ran
just like
into
to take
that,
a look at that.
you know, 6
Okay.
months or
Very
9
good.
months ago.
Very good, Mr. Chair.
Okay,
That's all I have.
My last comment is, I do have updates on shoddyreporting.com, so I encourage people to check it out. Thank you. And it's
Mr. Chair,
12:32.
can I have a copy of your video reference in there, number 12, I think you have?
Sure, I'll get you a copy. That's just the times that I was referencing to. Sure, I'll get you a
Thank you.
copy of that.
And I still think we need a motion to adjourn and not just, that
Well,
just
if
seems
we,
Not a requirement.
but I say.
not a
if-
requirement.
If a commissioner wants to do something else, we don't adjourn. I'm just saying, do we have agreement to adjourn?
I'm with you all the way.
Commissioner Boyce?
Yeah.
Okay, that wasn't difficult. Then we will adjourn at 12:32 PM. Yes, don't forget your microphone, Tom.